The years 2011 to 2014 would easily be the most influential years for the speedrunning scene thus far. The idea of speedrunning becoming more than just a niche subgenre of gaming was a difficult notion to grasp. But three major happenings in these golden years would propel speedrunning into the mainstream. 2011 was the year when Justin TV turned into Twitch.tv, a website where you could now broadcast your speedrunning attempts to a live audience. Back then, live streaming was a relatively new concept, and grinding runs were now a lot more fun when you had people you could interact with. Giano and Narcissa Wright would go on to create Speedruns Live in 2009, a website that saw its biggest spike in popularity around 2013, with thousands of speedrunners racing every day, and many viewers watching streams from the site's front page. Finally, speedrunning would gain a huge boost in activity with the help of charity speedrunning marathons, the two biggest being Games Done Quick in the United States and the European Speedrunner Assembly in Sweden. Thousands of viewers would tune in to see classic games from their youth being broken to bits. With this big shift in the scene, the days of SDA being the main place for all things speedrunning was in the past. Segmented speedrunning was quickly starting to take a backseat to the now more popular real-time attack. As the scene entered the live streaming era, it was just a matter of time before the Jack series would see spotlight in this new format. In mid-2012, the world would finally get the chance to see what Jak 3 could look like in an any% single segment setting, as a young, 15-year-old kid from Denmark would pick up the game. It was hard to know how vast the sea was, as I was just a small fish. My initial introduction to speedrunning was through an old PlayStation-focused tournament series called I'm a Speedrunner, where I made it all the way to the semi-finals in the 4th installment, which focused on Ratchet & Clank. My opponent was, funny enough, none other than Laponye36, the originator of Jak 3 speedrunning. What wasn't funny was how hard he trashed me in this race. He beat me so convincingly in this race to 10 platinum bolts that 14-year-old me made him double-check that he got them all before I would admit defeat.
And I get my 10th platinum ball.
Go ahead and check.
Despite the name I'm a Speedrunner, most participants in the tournament were casual Let's Players, including myself. So it was a watershed moment when I faced a real speedrunner in Laponye. Through future tournaments, I would be introduced to Speedruns Live and Twitch, where I would begin to take speedrunning a bit more seriously. Pretty much every day when I got home from school, I'd be racing other people. But sometimes I would attempt to upgrade my PB a lot, with my main game being Crash Bandicoot 2 at the time. And yes, this is how my Twitch page looked in 2012. Bored in a math class one day, I thought about how fun it would be to run Jak 3, since it was one of my favorite games growing up. When I got home from school that day, I did my first run essentially blind, unaware of any skips, and I ended up stopping after 3 hours, having barely beaten half the game. I started to think the game was simply too long to speedrun during weekdays, but I would eventually stumble upon Tom Jack's Hero Mode run on SDA, and realized the glitches he used drastically shortened the run. At the time, Hero Mode just wasn't my thing. I wanted to run any% and play the game from a fresh file. The issue was, nobody had completed a single segment run of the any% category, so I guess I had to make my own route. Since I was fairly young and new to this whole speedrunning thing, routing a brand new category was a bit challenging for me. So I reached out to Laponye, who would help teach me the game and collaborate on strategies and routing. My first ever runs of the game were unfortunately never archived, but my memory from this era is still pretty fresh. From what I can recall, my first run clocked in at 1 hour and 36 minutes real time, and I lowered it all the way down to a 1:13:22. Where we see my first run with video proof. Well, sort of. The frame rate does kinda suck. We're gonna be dealing with some choppy footage for a bit. Lack of quality is common in older speedrunning footage. Any% was overall a longer category to run over Hero Mode. This is because Any% has to do an extra 8 missions in the early game. The Dune Hopper is unlocked at the very start of the game on Hero Mode, but in Any% you gain access to the vehicle after the mission Corral Wild Leapers. Since there's no way to percentage warp to the mission early, Cave Skip would have to be performed later in the run. The additional 8 missions I now had to do were mostly done the intended way, but I managed to find a couple of optimizations. During the mission Catch Kangarats, you need to use a leaper lizard to eat 6 Kangarats scattered across Spargus City. After eating the last rat, you're normally stuck listening to Cleaver's monologue before being able to access the next mission. However, I discovered that it's possible to overlap it with the beginning of the next mission trigger if you hurry over to the cutscene zone before it plays, saving 15 seconds. The mission that I made my way into, Unlock Satellite, is also very important to talk about, as it's one of the biggest instances of RNG in the run. Symbols representing the face buttons on the PlayStation controller will slide in from the edge of the screen, where you have to capture them inside of the rings. The mission ends when you capture a total of 75 symbols, but there is a bit more to it. Capturing one symbol is worth 1 point, but capturing 2 in the same ring, aka a double, is worth 6 points. In my run, I ended up getting a total of 4 doubles, which is about average, but getting more essentially boils down to luck. A friend of mine called Cypress would discover a death warp after the desert race with Cleaver by driving into the water, saving around 10 seconds over driving back to the garage manually. On Corral Wild Leapers, Daxter needs to ride 3 leapers to get them into the corral. The controls for this mission are very slippery, and I had some trouble completing it quickly.
On the very edge of... Yeah, now I'm definitely losing time. Now watch me hit a wall. Yeah. There goes all my time.
After unlocking the Dune Hopper, I had to drive into the desert to farm 1 boost to execute Cave Skip. I had a bit of trouble getting over the invisible wall, but I got through in the end. Oh, sorry, I zoned out. I just realized that my dumbass went on Google Images and literally picked the first picture of every search result for these splits. I literally just slapped a JPEG of some eggs on there. Anyway, on Defend Ashland, my job seemed a little harder on paper, since the hero mode runs had all the guns unlocked from the start. Luckily for me, the beam reflexor is unlocked very early on in the game, and the Marauders get completely decimated when you spam it with jump spin combos. I still had to get good RNG to get the right ammo drops, since you run out pretty fast. On the revisit to the temple, you can see me doing side flips on the jetboard, a technique that gives you a small speed boost every time you do it. This is an intentional mechanic that was actually taught to the player during the jetboard tutorial in Jak 2. Lapagna and Tom Jack's usage of side flips in their segmented runs was sparse, only pulling out the move when large gaps had to be cleared. It's likely the two weren't comfortable with the technique and found the time save to be negligible. While I didn't do them everywhere, I was willing to throw them in as much as I could. While my early game had some inventive strats, my endgame lacked polish and left a lot to be desired. In Palace Ruins, I decided to use Infinite Flight Glitch to fly over the big wall at the start of the level. Because of how long it takes for you to gain any significant height, going all the way around the way the segmented runs had done was actually the better choice. During Precursor Robot, I was losing time from not shooting the enemies off the level, which I would have known about had I paid more attention to Lapagna and Tom Jack's runs. And I had no idea what I was doing on Terraformer. I said it best back then: I can still shave off load of shit. Take my word for it. Over the next 2 months, I would lower my time to 1:12:53 and then to 1:10:23. I was running the game in a very unoptimized yet humble period. It was more common at this time to see records fall by minutes rather than seconds. My gameplay wasn't exactly blowing people's minds, but with time, it was possible that I could become a skilled speedrunner. This would be the record for the rest of 2012, but at the start of the next year, I was back to try to get my hands on a sub 110. Previously, I had not been doing Lapagna's save warp from the temple to the cave, as I recall it not working for me in practice. In this run though, instead of saving and loading the game, restarting mission had the same effect, and was a few seconds faster. Having done this warp for the first time in a run, it was effectively free time save, where I was now ahead by over 2 minutes. Going into the endgame, I would lose nearly a minute in Palace Ruins and BTR combined, but I saved 20 back in Darkship with a small new skip. In Tom Jack's run, Infinite Flight Glitch was used to reach the elevator shaft where he rode the big platform all the way to the bottom where the escape sequence takes place. In my run, I realized that you weren't required to ride the elevator to load the escape sequence. There's a load trigger located roughly halfway down the shaft, so instead of riding the platform, I re-entered the inbounds area from below it, and started free-falling to the bottom much faster. I still had a lot to learn, but this felt like my first proper milestone in one of the first games I'd ever tried to speedrun. Jak 3 any percent in sub 110.
109.26. Awesome.
Congrats.
Thanks, dude. Dude, that was so good. But yet so bad.
I was having a lot of fun playing Jak 3. I was in my honeymoon with speedrunning, just enjoying the process of improving my time. As a side note, this run had a difficulty scale tied to my splits, so you could see where the run was more likely to die or what I was likely to breeze through. Low-key, pretty sick idea for 2012. Because of my dedication to the game, I would build a small following on Twitch. My viewer count would average between 15 to 40 people. Of course, it's not much, but the scene was still young and the people were hungry for Jak. A few of my friends would race me occasionally on speedruns live. Even if they didn't know the route as well as me, I was just happy to see the game get some activity. I even set a new record during a race on February 12th with 108.18, claiming that the 105 was within reach. 4 days later, I would have my first shot at the 105. Being over 2.5 minutes ahead, it was looking good. Breakthrough Ruins would claim its first victim. A tough pill to swallow considering I was on the home stretch. The 105 would have to wait another day. That day would come, but not in the way anyone thought it would happen. During yet another attempt, someone in my Twitch chat would show up with a shocking message. They claimed to have achieved a 105 and got it on video. In these kinds of scenarios, it's understandable to be skeptical. But I knew the claim was true when I saw that the message was from the user Laponye36. He was back, folks, this time trying to see what kind of damage he could do to any percent. Laponye's run was achieved mostly through better execution and less deaths, but there was one big new strategy he had incorporated. During the desert race near the start of the game, all you have to do is drive 3 laps around the course in the Tough Puppy. In my runs, I would usually get an in-game time of around 3:10, but Laponye managed a 2:27 in his run. How is that possible? Well, Laponye had managed to find a shortcut on the track, right across this rock, skipping the entire cave section on the left. As Laponye approaches the rock, he activates a boost to gather speed, and jumps on top of it to ramp the vehicle into the air. He's able to sustain enough height to clear the out-of-bounds zone to land safely on the other side of the track. When he drives over the finish line, the lap does indeed count, saving 45 seconds when done across all 3 laps. Despite improving the record by a bit over 2 minutes, Laponye still had a lot of sections that were very improvable. He took 2 deaths on Corral Wild Leapers. He somehow managed to get his car stuck in this area for around 25 seconds, which admittedly is pretty funny. And he took a death in Ecomine. With all of these mistakes in mind, Laponye had his sights set on a time below 1 hour and 3 minutes. While I would have loved to give him some competition, his speedrunning expertise blew me out of the water. Laponye was gonna hit the ground running, and throughout the month of March, his grind would ensue. Sub 103 had been achieved with 102.29. The game was inching closer to 59, and a new easy time saver would make getting there far more viable. After returning to the garage to get the call for Defend Ashlyn, if you go into the menu and select Restart Mission as you leave the garage again, you'll warp all the way to the Oasis and skip the whole drive. With this saving 50 seconds and Laponye still having more time to clean up, could he really take it all the way? Laponye would achieve 59.41 on April 1st, 2013, a legendary milestone hit by a legendary speedrunner. For me, it was nothing short of mesmerizing to watch Lapagnier just shave off minute after minute in such a short amount of time. His attempt count was so much lower than mine at the time that it really showed me how important it was to focus on consistency. In 2013, it was fairly uncommon to see a PlayStation 2 game get this kind of optimization. Yes, we still have a bit to go, but for the time, Lapagnier really paved the way. Witnessing speedrunning history right before my eyes definitely awoke something in me. I had never really tried to be good at anything in my life, and if this milestone taught me anything, it was to work on my game and take it more seriously if I wanted to get good. One way Lapagnier was able to gain time was by simply being more comfortable using the jetboard in several spots. Palace Ruins has a lot of enemies to deal with, yet Lapagnier fought his instincts to clear the mobs and stayed on the jetboard because it was faster. More restart mission warps would be implemented as we started discovering them with greater frequency. One could be applied during both trips to the temple. Once the minimap goes away after crossing the waterfall, you spawn inside of the temple lobby after restarting, saving 6 seconds per warp. Another one was found after the Artifacts mission, which would warp you straight into the cutscene for the Leaper race to save 5 seconds. At the time, I really thought Lapagnier had conquered the game, but regardless of anyone knowing it at the time, his run was just a small piece in a bigger puzzle. There were mistakes, and Lapagnier would be the one to clean them up. After getting a quick 101 as his warm-up run, Lapagnier would go on to get 5901 on May 3rd. Despite barely missing the 58, he would take a short break from the category to go back to the drawing board, where his genius would once again be on full display as he would discover a new sequence break. So far in this series, the Dune Hopper has played an essential role in performing Cave Skip, as it was the only tool able to grant you enough height to get on top of the wall. Well, Lapagnier began a run in late June that followed the mission tree as usual, all the way up until Metalheads 1. Upon completing the mission, he heads to the throne room to talk to Damus, who hands you the Wave Concussor. The weapon is meant to be used in the next mission for an arena fight, but instead, Lapagnier heads to the garage, grabs the Sand Shark, and heads on over to the cave. You see, Lapagnier had discovered something very significant with the collision on this particular rock. If you try to land on it, Jack will enter a sliding state where he's unable to jump. But Lapagnier had found a small corner where Jack is able to stand normally for a brief moment. This was enough to double jump, spin, and shoot the Wave Concussor to make it to the top of the cave. This eliminated 2 whole missions from the 80% route, earn Second War Amulet, and corral wild leapers. We unfortunately once again face the issue of having to do destroy eggs with a vehicle you're not intended to use. This time it's the Sand Shark, a great car overall, but for destroy eggs, it's arguably even more finicky than the Dune Hopper, and Lapagnier was definitely a bit underprepared. After destroy eggs, Lapagnier had to drive back to the garage to swap to the Dune Hopper, as it was necessary to cross the islands to the temple. This lost a lot of time over the previous route, but after finishing the temple, he would make all of the time back and then some, as destroying the car could now warp Jack all the way back to the garage, resulting in around a minute and a half of total time save. With free time to gain, Lapagnier seemed to have achieved a 58:16 with no video, but this run would come out to a 57:26. Lapagnier once again showed dominance at the top. His ability to find new time save while capitalizing quickly was extremely impressive to witness, having been there to see it all for myself. Was he simply too great to be challenged? The closest runner-up at the time was me, who had gotten Jak 3 Any% accepted into the European Speedrunner Assembly 2013, where I now had to play in front of thousands of people. To prepare, I would achieve my first sub-1 hour time in May with 59:44, which I would improve again in July to 58:45. I would have loved to have a more competitive time going in, but I was definitely still capable of putting on a good show. When it was my turn to play, I was admittedly pretty nervous. I was only 16 years old at the time, and English wasn't my first language, but I had some friendly support around me despite the community being really small at the time. The run entailed some good and some bad. I messed up the pathfinding for the EcoMine proxy a few times, but I managed to hit all 3 lap skips on the desert race to save the full 45 seconds. As the run came to a close, the final time said 1:02:16.
Miss time and I can miss the cycle. And time.
That's not bad. Yeah, 102 was something I was expecting. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
After the run's conclusion, I was pretty happy with my performance, but I did have one intrusive thought before and after the run that I couldn't escape. I felt if I was going to be the one to play at ESA, I should be the best player. It was looming in my mind that I hadn't been the record holder since Lapagne's return 6 months prior. He was just the better speedrunner in every way. He was older than me, he was more experienced than me, and didn't lose his temper as easily. To me, it appeared as if Lapagne always had a vague resemblance of a game plan. It just seemed like he knew what he was doing, almost like he had an outline on how to approach each mission. A part of this was probably practice, which, believe it or not, was a rather foreign concept to me in 2013. What is practice, and why is it useful? These were all valid questions and concepts I was still trying to process at a young age. I still had ways to go, but a good first step was reclaiming the record from Lapagne when I got home from ESA. While I wasn't sure if I truly had it in me, the best I could do was give it my best. I was fairly certain that Lapagne was going to improve his 57.26 as well. After all, it was his first proper run with the new route. But in a weird turn of events, Lapagne suddenly stopped playing Jack 3. Despite there being some solid time saves still left in his run, he perhaps wanted to move on to other speedrunning endeavors. He pioneered the game with his segmented runs back in 2009, and after pushing the 80% record by nearly 10 minutes, he peaced out and moved on to other things. His legacy will forever be cemented as Jack 3's originator. This left me, the sole competitor, with a choice: hone my skills and surpass Lapagne, or fail and allow myself to bite the dust. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing or supporting me on Patreon. Take care, and I'll see you next time for Era 3.